Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. Ramadan Mubarak to everyone out there celebrating. We are almost through this beautiful, blessed month, and today we are coming to you with another live. This one is about the hijab ban in France. I've got a special guest with me, Shaima. She's a French journalist based in London. She's worked extensively on racism and discrimination in Europe with a focus on Islamophobia in France. She's also a human rights activist who advocates for refugees, women's rights, and freedom of press. Her recent work has been seen on NBC News and TRT World. Shaima has covered major stories like Arab Spring, and I hope I can say his last name, Jamal Khashoggi's.
Jamal
Thank you.
Khashoggi.
I was like, I'm not going to get this last name. I'm the worst at pronouncing names.
It's okay. It's not an easy name to pronounce anyway.
Thank you. So how are you this morning? Well, I guess afternoon for you.
Yeah, pretty much afternoon. Salam alaikum, first of all. Thank you so much for having me on this live stream and for giving me this platform to speak about this topic of the hijab ban in France. I'm good, alhamdulillah, everything is fine, just making the most out of the last 10 days of Ramadan, pretty much.
Same over here. I hope
Yeah.
it's going well for everybody. I feel like last year everybody was kind of celebrating in a similar way when everybody was kind of on lockdown, and this year it's different for everyone. You never know who's going to go out and who's not. So
exactly. Some countries are still on lockdown, others are pretty much relaxed the measures. So it's it's been I think it's been a strange year for a lot of people.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't even know where I want to start because there's so many things I'm curious about, because when somebody is from France and potentially experienced Islamophobia there, it's very, very interesting. And you've lived in a few different areas, I know, and you're in London now, so there's so many questions going through my mind. So I guess if you want, we could start at the beginning. I'm curious, what made you want to be a journalist, and what, I guess, pushed you to be an advocate for like refugees and women's rights?
That's a very good question, actually. I get asked a lot why I wanted to be a journalist, wanted to become a journalist, because this is not necessarily welcoming environment for Muslim women, to be honest, for women in general. But when you are a Black woman or a Muslim woman or an Asian woman, it's never easy to be a journalist. So it's not the easy path, especially growing up in a country like France, wearing the hijab, going through a lot of challenges in my studies. I didn't really choose the easy path, let's say it like that. But I think the biggest motivation for me was to kind of tell the stories that are either unreported or not reported in the media, because being in any newsroom, you can highlight some stories that people are not necessarily aware of. And I was looking at the media, or reading the press, and I would never see stories that would reflect my concerns or problematics that I was interested in. So I was like, oh, maybe there's a void there, and we need more Muslim women in the media. So I started asking myself question, okay, if we need more Muslim women in the media, and you are a Muslim woman, maybe you should do that. So I kind of took this path and studied journalism, because I was interested in seeing those stories that no one was telling, and because also I was seeing a lot of injustice and oppression against Muslims all over the world, and I wanted to, not being an advocate, but like a voice for the Muslim brothers and sisters all over the world. And this is actually my biggest motivation in being a journalist, is to do that.
There's that saying that you can't be what you can't see, but at some point somebody has to go, maybe I can do that. And it sounds like you were that person. You weren't seeing what you wanted, and so you became,
alhamdulillah, exactly.
Inshallah, you'll be an example for other Muslim women out there and other
Inshallah. Inshallah, I hope so. Like, we really need to see more Muslim sisters in newsrooms. It's I really advocate for more diversity, inclusion in newsrooms as well. And this is important, to have people who look like us in those newsrooms to tell the stories that, the stories that matter to us. It's as simple as that. And I really encourage sisters to study journalism and to be journalists, even though, like I said, it's not necessarily a welcoming environment, an inclusive environment for women like us. It doesn't mean we shouldn't push those doors and, try to aim for this in our lives. I think it's important to do that as well.
I have seen a lot of stories where women will be offered a position, say in broadcast journalism, but they're told that you have to take your hijab off.
Yes, it happens.
Yeah, it's very, very unfortunate.
Unfortunately.
Yes. Growing up in France, did you see a lot of Islamophobia then versus, I guess, what's going on now?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's something, looking back on it, it starts from a very young age, actually, and you don't necessarily realize this when you are a young woman, because you don't understand the problematics of racism and racial injustice and oppression and Islamophobia. But it's all the time around you when your teachers in class tell history teachers, for example, tell stories about Islam and Muslims. It's always very biased and stereotypes. When you are taught philosophy or other topics, it's always there is a problem in the way we deal with Islam and Muslims in France, and this I've noticed that. I've realized this from a very young age. It's just that I couldn't put words on it. The word Islamophobia came really late in my life, as a French Muslim woman. Growing up, we knew about racism, of course, a lot of civil rights movements and movements in France that fight racism. But when it comes to Islam and Muslims, we couldn't really put words on our suffering, but it's always been there. And the moment I started wearing hijab is really when I realized how bad it was for Muslims in France, because you are literally banned from everywhere, and it's a community that's marginalized. We don't have the same rights and the same freedoms, and we don't have the same access to work. We don't have the same access to housing. We don't have the same access to a lot of things in the society, unlike the rest of the population, just because we're Muslims. And let's not forget the history of France as well, because France colonized a lot of the North African countries, especially Algeria, for decades and centuries. And the history of France with its minorities, with the Muslims, is really linked to that history. It's a history of violence and oppression and racism. And that you only understand it when you start studying and taking interest in the world that's in the problematics of the world that surrounds you. And then when you start asking questions and when you start understanding what's going on, honestly, it's very scary. It's very scary. The situation in France today for Muslims is extremely concerning. And that's why we are here today to discuss this, because it may affect mostly Muslim women in France, but on a global scale, I think Islamophobia is a topic that affects all Muslims all over the world.
Wow, there's a lot that was going through my mind as you were talking, and I thought it was really interesting that you brought up being taught about maybe potentially talking about Islam and Muslims in history class, because that's been a huge topic that World Hijab Day has been discussing. Please excuse me. My allergies are just so bad right now.
God bless you.
Big allergies. It's warming up and it's bothering me so much. But we talked about, the founder Nazma and I have talked about how growing up we didn't have a lot of, I guess, access to that history in class. I think my teachers, they just brushed over it. My history teacher didn't really go in depth with Islam. I remember, I think, seeing it in the textbook. They mentioned it and then it was gone. There was no teaching about Islam. And so I do often wonder in some other countries if they talk about it and how it's talked about, if it is a negative perspective, because people are biased oftentimes, and it's very unfortunate, because if we educate people, then we're less likely to have Islamophobia if there's an understanding somewhere. So it's very
Absolutely.
interesting that you brought that up, and World Hijab Day is working on a new movement for this month, making it Muslim History Month. So
Yes.
it's very important. So we're constantly trying to dismantle Islamophobia everywhere, and it's very unfortunate what's happening in France with this potential ban, and that the French ban will also affect Canada, because if they put the ban into effect, Quebec is more than likely to also implement a ban.
Absolutely. This is something I've been saying a lot, throughout the conversations I've had on the separatism bill that includes the hijab bans, but not only. But the problem now with what's happening in France is that a lot of the Muslims feel like they're not concerned with it because it's in France. But I'm saying you're wrong, because we've seen that there's a domino effect here. Whatever's happening in France can, happen in all surrounding countries in Europe. We've seen that in Belgium there was an attempt to ban hijab in universities, and a lot of the Muslims, the sisters there, they protested. They didn't really get much solidarity or encouragement in that. But this is something that was going to happen, but they backtracked eventually and they decided not to do it. In Denmark, they've banned the niqab. There are discussions in Germany. There are discussions in many European countries on banning the hijab, banning the niqab, and restricting access to Muslim women who wear the hijab from different parts of the society. And this is extremely serious. I don't think that people realize that this is not just a French issue. Islamophobia, like I said earlier, is a global problem. Um, Here in the UK, we don't ban hijab. We don't. But Islamophobia is also an issue. Let's not, idealize the society we're living. It's a more tolerant society. The Islamophobia is not as institutionalized as it is in France. That's a fact. There's no comparison with what's happening in France, but there are issues as well. There is discrimination towards Muslim women who wear the hijab. It's the discrimination that doesn't really speak its name. We don't say openly to a woman, take off your hijab if you want this job, or take off your hijab if you want to have access to I don't know, to politics or anything else. But we are discriminated. You are not hired, you are not given the same chances. Even when you work, and even in the workplace, I've had a lot of sisters reaching out to me, telling me about their experience of racism and discrimination in the light of the Black Lives Matter movement. We've had discussions in newsrooms about racism, equality, diversity, and a lot of people felt the need to speak about their experience of racism and Islamophobia. So it's really a global issue. It's not just in France. And whatever's happening in France can happen anywhere else. Like banning the hijab now in France is becoming a reality, has become a reality. But it can be the case here as well in the UK in the future if we don't take the necessary measures and if we don't speak up and raise awareness.
It's very much a global issue. Every time this topic comes up, I always mention, I feel like once it got out that this ban was potentially happening, it seemed like other countries kind of jumped on board and they were like, well, maybe we should ban the hijab too, or close down our Islamic schools. And it's just mind-blowing. I feel like people are constantly trying to wipe Islam off the face of the earth, but they've been trying to for
Yeah.
a long time, since the beginning of time. And it just makes me so sad to see that. So you mentioned, that they haven't, I guess, I don't know that they've attempted to ban hijab at some point in the UK, but I know, like you mentioned, there's, of course, Islamophobia there. It's everywhere. Have you seen any attacks on anyone, or have you experienced anything yourself that's based on Islamophobia?
Yes, of course. I mean, I wasn't actually, when I was in France, I was assaulted. I was physically and verbally assaulted on numerous occasions because of my hijab. This is a reality that Muslim women live in France. I'm going to speak about France because the UK is a bit different. Here, there are assaults. Of course, there are Muslim women who are harassed and assaulted. Not just Muslim women, Muslims in general, even Muslim men. There was Muslim men who are, abused and assaulted and insulted because they're Muslim, visible Muslims, whether they have a beard or a qamis, or whether you wear hijab or niqab, you are visible Muslim. You can tell, by the way you look, that you are Muslim. So you are assaulted, you are harassed and abused. In France, it's just another level of Islamophobia. Like I always say, like many of us are saying, France, for me, is the laboratory of Islamophobia, is a stronghold of Islamophobia. Whatever is happening elsewhere is necessarily an echo to what's happening in France, because in France the situation there is extremely serious. I mean, we have institutionalized Islamophobia by voting laws to ban hijab, not only hijab, but also there's a crackdown on Muslim organizations and mosques. And it's all part of this new separatism bill, which I'm going to speak into details later. But going back to your question, yes, I was assaulted. Yes, I was abused as a Muslim woman in France simply because I wear the hijab. It happened to me on numerous occasions. Just walking down the streets, you get people spitting at your face, calling you Osama bin Laden, telling you go back to your country, drawing a parallel between terrorists and you, because they think that you advocate for that kind of what they call extremist Islam because you wear the hijab. They think that you advocate for ISIS. They think you advocate for Salafis. They have a lot of wrong ideas, misconceptions about what Islam is, and they don't try to understand what's going on. They don't try to understand why Muslim women make the choice to wear the hijab. There is no, in the society, there's a clear division between Muslims and non-Muslims. I'm not saying that all French people are racist or Islamophobic. That is not what I'm saying. Actually, a lot of French people are open-minded and tolerant and inclusive, especially younger generations. But what I'm saying here is that our government, our politicians, and our media as well. I'm a journalist, so I know what's going on in the media there. 24/7 attacking Islams and Muslims. We have become the scapegoat of the republic, of the nation. And this is where it's becoming really serious, and we need to raise the alarm here and to say stop to that, right? So yes, Muslim women are assaulted on a daily basis. Just, turn on your TV and you will hear them speaking about hijab all day long as if it was the only problem in the society. We don't have unemployment. We don't have a disastrous management of the pandemic crisis. We don't have student poverty. We don't have all these problems. We are a perfect country. So the only problem we have in France is Islam. And I'm being sarcastic here because that is what's going on. And this is where our politicians are failing because they are not addressing the real issues, which are those that I've just said now. They are diverting the attention from the real issues in the society by taking Islam and Muslims as targets. But that's always been the case for the last 3 decades, and we've been saying this. I have been saying this for the last 10 years.
Very well said. Very well said. It's such a heavy topic to talk about Islamophobia, and then to talk about how governments are constantly against their people and their religious freedoms and things like that. Even in the US, where I come from, you're supposed to have freedom of religion, and people don't really mean that. They don't really mean that because people don't even realize that, for example, I'm a white American born and raised in the US in a small town, and they don't understand how I'm Muslim. They don't understand that it's for everybody. And they're like, go back to your country. And people think it doesn't meet their country's ideals and things like that. And it's so unfortunate. Why do you think, and I've asked a couple of people this before, why do you think it's happening now? Is there some reason that it's happening now? I mean, France has, been a long time, I don't even know a good word for it. I guess just against Muslims for a long time, banning burkini and everything like that. But is there a reason you think it's happening now?
Yeah, actually, it's not happening just now, like this latest separatism bill with the hijab ban is just the latest, actually, in a series of Islamophobic laws against the Muslim, Islamophobic bills against the Muslims. Before talking about the framework and the context in which this is happening now and why it's happening now, I just want us to go back a little bit, a few years ago, because this is important for people who are not familiar with what's happening in France to understand that. Let's not forget that in the 15th of March 2004, which we call in French La Loi du 15 Mars, this is the law that officially banned hijab from schools, right? From education. This is the law that officially marginalized Muslim women, young Muslim women, by not giving them access to education. Or if you want to go to school, you have to take off your hijab, which a lot of Muslim women had to do because school is an obligation. You have to go to school. You have to go to school until the age of 16 years old at least. But if you are under 16 years old and you want to wear your hijab in school, you can't. So this law, the 15th of March 2004, was officially adopted, was officially signed by then President Jacques Chirac and passed into law. And since then, and we're talking about 2004, so it's what, 17 years ago? Hijab has become a national hysteria. We have created a national hysteria around a piece of cloth. Can you imagine that? It's just a piece of cloth that women put on their head. Yet it has become the main concern of a whole nation because all the presidents since Jacques Chirac and Sarkozy and Hollande and now Emmanuel Macron are all of them have made the hijab into the biggest issue in the country. So it's not happening just now. There has been a succession of laws against hijab. So this law in 2004, there was a law in 2010 banning the niqab, which they called the full face covering. There was a law to officially ban the hijab from the workplace as well. You know, it's just a series of Islamophobic law that targets Muslim women, because Muslim women are the targets here. And we are hiding under the pretext of fighting for secularism and against radical Islam to vote those laws, which means we don't make the difference between, you know, a person who chooses to wear the hijab, a person who is forced to wear the hijab, a person who wears the hijab for religious reasons, and a person who wears the hijab for other reasons. Because not all Muslim women wear it for religious reasons. That's not true. You know, it might be a stand, might be like a rebellion, it might be just a phase. You know, some Muslim women decide to wear it for different purposes. So it's like denying us this, you know, this diversity within our community and the right for us to choose what to wear or not, right? So it's this separatism bill comes at a time, at a critical time, actually. So what is the separatism bill? So I just want to explain to people what this is about, because this is extremely serious. Because although there has been many laws to ban hijab, this one here is taking things to a whole new level. Like the government is really ramping up, you know, Islamophobia and hatred towards Islam by targeting the hijab. So I just want to go back to a speech of the French president Emmanuel Macron that he made last October. So he made a speech on secularism and Islam. And he said, the French president Emmanuel Macron, and this is very important, that Islam is a religion which is experiencing a crisis today all over the world. He said that. These are his words. And he said all over the world. He didn't just mention France. Right. And he said there was a need to free Islam in France, from foreign influences. So these were the French president words last October. That was before introducing the separatism bill. Like, we are here just setting the grounds for more Islamophobia. So when he said that, it was a clear way to warn that, okay, we want to fight against that type of Islam. So we are warning you, and your religion is experiencing a crisis. It's lecturing Muslims and telling them that their own religion is experiencing a crisis. So this is how it all started. And 2 months later, after the speech, the French government unveiled a draft legislation, in order to combat what they called, and again, I'm quoting them, Islamist separatism, right? So this is where the separatism bill comes from, the name separatism. It comes from that, right? In order to combat what they called Islamist separatism, an ideology that they describe as the enemy of the Republic, the enemy within. So when you use that kind of narrative, when you use that kind of language, what message are you sending to people out there, to the rest of the population? You are sending the message that Muslims are have a religion that's in crisis. Muslims need to face the challenges of Islamism, and Muslims are the enemies of the Republic. So this is the context in which the separatism bill was voted. So, and among all the amendments, because the separatism bill is wide, you know, it's not just about the hijab. It has many other things, including the way the government wants to control the imams and the mosques. So, among the amendment of the separatism bill are the hijab ban for Muslim girls under the age of 18, the ban for hijabi mothers to go to extracurricular activities with their kids. So you are not allowed to accompany your kids to school trips or other activities if you wear the hijab. How horrible is it for a mother? How horrible is it for a mother not to be allowed to go with her children to school just because she wears a hijab? And also the ban of hijab in sports and swimming, right? So this is part of the separatism bill. This is not just that, but the separatism bill also includes a crackdown on Muslim organizations and Muslim, public figures. When I say crackdown, I mean it, because the government has shut down the CCIF and Baraka City, which are two major Muslim organizations in France. Were actually, because they do exist, but not in France anymore. So this is part of a more global action of the French government against Islam and Muslims, and it's very important to understand that. And it's also important to understand that this so-called separatism bill meant to protect French secularism and to combat extremism, for me, the way I see it, is a bill that clearly targets Islam and Muslim, especially Muslim women. So I just wanted to clarify this to make things clearer.
I'm glad you did, because there may be people out there who don't know what it completely encompasses, and it's a lot. It's a lot. And that quote from a leader, a person in a leadership position, I mean, that just, it really kind of just starts a fire that spreads. And because I feel like sometimes people, from what I've seen, don't always know anything about Islam, and then it's like somebody just plants this little idea in their head and they go, you know what, maybe I feel the same way. Because even when I started wearing hijab, I would come in contact with students, typically high school age students, and I could tell they didn't know exactly what my hijab was. They'd be like, I like your thing, or
Your
they call
thing.
it, they'd be like, your hat, they don't know what to
Yeah.
call it. And I'm like, do they
Yeah.
even realize that I'm Muslim? I'm like, do they even
Not
realize?
necessarily, yeah, but it's a good,
Exactly.
actually, it's a good way to introduce them to Islam and to hijab and
Exactly.
what it means, But when people start asking questions, it's actually a good thing. It's a positive thing. It's when we
Exactly.
stop asking question or questioning the people in charge, or holding them accountable for what they say or what they do. This is when the problems begin. I think in France there's a real issue in terms of freedom of worship and freedom of expression when it comes to Islam and Muslims, because when we constantly abuse and insult Islam and Muslims, we hide always behind the freedom of expression, right? But could we do that for other religion? Could we do that for other religious communities? I'm asking this question. I have never seen such hatred for any other religious group in France, honestly, whether it's on national TV or from politicians. This is highly concerning when it is, strictly Muslims are always the exception when it comes to that. So hiding behind the freedom of expression to justify hatred, this is serious for a democratic country, right? And hiding behind the secularism, the so-called secularism, to justify laws against Muslim is also something that's very concerning, because we are here, giving secularism a different meaning from what it really is. when France decided to be a secular country, it meant the separation of the church and the state. I'm saying the church because back then it was Christianity, right?
Right.
Although there's always been Muslims in France, that's a fact, historically speaking, right? But when they decided La Loi 1905, which is a law that was adopted centuries ago, not centuries but decades ago, to separate the state and the church, that's what it means, secularism, which means the state does not interfere in religious affairs, and vice versa. The religious affairs don't interfere in the state's affairs. So when the state actually decides to vote a law to tell me as a Muslim woman, I don't have the right to wear my hijab, what is it doing? Is it not interfering in my religion? Is it not interfering in my freedom of worship and freedom of choice? Because I chose as a Muslim to wear the hijab. And I'm saying this here because people need to hear that. And they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it in France that we made the choice to wear a hijab. It was not imposed on us by a father, a husband, or a brother, or an imam, or anybody else. This is our freedom, our choice. As highly educated, responsible, Muslim women who are aware of their religion, who understand their religion. This is our choice. This is my choice. So when you tell me that you are banning me from existing in the society in the name of secularism, I'm saying this is not what secularism means. That was not the initial meaning of secularism. So even that secularism is very specific to France. We don't see it anywhere else. And I'm saying this, secularism has become a religion of itself, has become an extremist, ideology of itself. And I'm going to add on top of that, it has become a white supremacy ideology. When you tell minorities, Muslims, what to do and how to live their life, and when you try to frame in what context they should or should not practice their religion, there is a big issue here. And this is not democratic. This is not what a democracy is. And, very ironically, I've said that, but I want to repeat it here. The French motto, you know what it is? Let me tell you. It is liberté, égalité, fraternité. This is our motto. Liberty, equality, and brotherhood. So I'm asking, where do we stand as Muslim women in that?
Very good points. Very good points. And I'm glad you brought up the fact that this is a choice. I try to use that word as much as I can. France thinks that they're supposedly saving people, helping the religion. And I'm like, no, clearly you haven't done any research, because it just, words, I can't, you are so well spoken. And I'm just like over here, like internally, like fighting with France in my head.
It is. Yeah, it is. I mean, it makes
educated yourself on this religion to know that people made this choice to wear hijab and why they're wearing it. And if you take our hijab away, is that going to make us less Muslim? No,
it's not. No, absolutely not. No, this is.
You can't take away our religion. It's here. I don't know if anybody can see my heart. It's in your heart, not your head.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah. That's important to say, and I'm glad you're saying this. I think that this is an issue that we see in different countries all over the world, like the fact that people think Muslim women are oppressed, and we should free them from this oppression. But thank you very much, but I don't need anybody to free me from my own oppression, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always being sarcastic when I say these things, because it is quite phony, right? It is. I find this extremely phony when people say that to me, and I'm like, okay, so we live in societies where there are real issues when it comes to women's rights. There are real issues when it comes to domestic abuse. There are real issues when it comes to equality and justice for women. And yet we are just focusing on Islam and Muslims. As a matter of fact, if people studied Islam, they would know that this is the only religion in the world that gives women full rights and freedom. Yes. Honestly, and that's something that needs to be highlighted, and people need to hear it, because you cannot in 2021 allow yourself to be so ignorant. You necessarily or you must have Muslims around you in your family, in your workplace, your neighbors, people who live around you, and yet you are ignorant about Islam and Muslims. How could this be possible? But when it comes to hijab, it's always been, a topic of attack. When media or politicians attack Islam and Muslims, who do they choose to attack first? Muslim women. And they say, oh, look what's happening in Iran and Saudi Arabia. Yeah, but we are not in Iran and Saudi Arabia. We are Western Muslims. We are born and grew up here. In France, we are the seventh, eighth generation, of Muslims. It's time to stop, treating our generation and this generation as if they were newly, arrived in the country. We are not immigrants, right? We are born and raised in the country. We're part of a society. Well, when you don't allow us to exist in the society because you are banning us from work, from education, from sports, from everything, what do you expect Muslims to feel like except angry and frustrated and to speak up, Because we are allowed now to speak up, and thank God for social media. Because we on national TV, you never see Muslim women wear the hijab being invited to debate. It's a whole white male female panel discussing Islam and Muslims without the first concerned, which is us. We are never invited to speak about something that is related to us directly. How crazy is this? How crazy is this to hear debates on national TV, about freedom and secularism and Islam and Islamism without the people who are concerned? That is democratic for you? I don't think so.
Very well said. Oh man, it's very mind-blowing. It's so mind-blowing. I don't understand people's thinking, and I look at the response and I feel like the response is pretty well. It's going pretty well. I mean, we have people who are fasting in unity, wearing hijab during Ramadan, and some people are doing it because of France. And I'm like, is France gonna see this and go, maybe we were wrong? Probably not. But they are, and I hope in the back of their minds, they're like, wow, these people are really passionate about being able to wear their hijabs. I don't think they'll ever say that. I don't think they'll ever, they would never out in public say anything. But I think they're going to see people's passion about it.
I think they see that. French President Emmanuel Macron was very critical towards an article that was published in the New York Times. He wasn't happy about it because that article was, specifically saying what we are saying here, that there is an issue of Islamophobia in France and that minorities are targeted. I wrote an article for NBC News about police brutality and the way it targets minorities in the suburbs of France. So we have voices outside France who are saying what is happening there. It's really serious and it's quite concerning. And what is the French government doing? Is there going to be any reaction? And the only reaction we had from the French president and other politicians is, oh, this article in the New York Times is absolutely outrageous. We are not what they say we are. But we are saying you that this is the case, we are telling you that this is actually really what is happening in France. And, journalists are clever enough to do their own investigation and to gather information and evidence of what's happening there just by speaking to people like us who are able to, to confirm and give more information about Islamophobia and how it affects us. But our own government is not listening to us, doesn't want to and won't. And, we're not here hoping that they will do something. We're not here begging for them to do something and to tell them, okay, stop hating on us. We are here to raise awareness and to let the whole world know that France is an Islamophobic and racist country. I am here to say that, and I'm not afraid to say it because that's the reality. Now, whether they hear it or not is not the problem. It's none of my concerns, honestly, because I know that they won't, and the separatism bill is likely to be adopted. It still needs to go through the assembly, and there's a whole round of steps before it's finally adopted. But if they adopted the 15th of March law to ban hijab from schools, they can do anything. When it comes to Islams and Muslims, there are no boundaries, there are no limits. And I don't want to say, I don't want to make it sound like we are desperate or victims. There are issues in France, yes, but we are here to show that we are taking actions. We are speaking up, and our voices should be heard. And if they're not heard in France, we'll take them elsewhere. We'll
Yes.
take them elsewhere, and this is why I'm here. Alhamdulillah, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. For me, it means a lot, you know. And again, you know, and the context in France is it's not just about Islamophobia. Okay, let's be real. France is a country that's in decline. It's in decline on so many levels, economically, you know, in terms of moral values, in terms of its leadership, you know, in Europe. It is not the country it used to be, right? And because this is a country that's in decline, a lot of, you know, people are questioning, you know, the politicians' decisions when it comes to economy, when it comes to society and everything that's happening there. People are protesting in France against the government, not because of Islam, but because they want better living conditions. They want better wages. They want better schools. They want safety. They want a stop to police brutality or, you know, identity controls towards minorities. They're protesting because they want their politicians to stop the corruption. They're protesting for several reasons, but Islam is not one of them. Islam is not one of them. And I want to say something important as well, is that we have upcoming presidential elections soon. So I think what is happening with this government now is that they are trying to attract a certain type of voters. And I'm talking here about far right people, racist people. Hence, this whole very populist narrative. Hence, the need to find scapegoats and targets, you know. I want to attract that type of voters. So let's talk about Islam and Muslims. Let's slander Islam and Muslims because they are a threat to the republics. They are the enemies, and they are responsible for all the illnesses in the society. That's how they think, and it's very easy, you know, to do that. And I think we've seen this in a lot of countries. Unfortunately, most of the time, it's not in democratic countries that we see that. So it's very sad, honestly, to see France being in such a situation. I feel very sad.
Yes, it's a very sad situation all around. I did wonder if it was a political move to say, because that has been kind of on the back burner for some people. They kind of mention it, but France has been Islamophobic for so long, and unfortunately, around the world, I feel like France is often romanticized. It has been in the past, you know, as this great vacation destination
Yeah.
and things like that. And looking at it now, especially from the Muslim perspective, not so much. You know, people aren't going to feel welcome there. And if you're going to stand in solidarity with Muslims, you're probably not going to want to go there so much either. And so they really are hurting themselves. And you're right, we can't just play the victim. Yes, we have to fight back. But like I said, even if they take away hijab, that's not going to make anybody less Muslim. They're
Yeah,
not
absolutely,
going to take
absolutely.
away their faith. So no
It's
matter
only
what happens,
taking away our freedom.
yeah,
That's all they're doing.
they're never going to win whatever they're trying to win exactly.
It's
So
it's a constant struggle, you know. It's a constant, you know, we are constantly questioning the motivations of this government, but we are, you know, we know, you know, how politics work.
yeah,
That's that, you know, when you have elections coming and you have to attract a certain type of voters, so you always have to find a reason to act, whether it's immigration or refugees or Muslims or minorities. These are narratives that actually work, you know. And here in the UK, this is what allowed the Brexit to happen. People voted for Brexit without even knowing what it meant economically and the impact of such a decision. They voted because we want to reclaim, sorry, our territory and our country, and we don't want immigrants to come here. So we're going to close our borders, leave the European Union, and that's about it. So this is a, you know, dynamic we see many times, not just in France, you know. But France is, you know, as you said, it's selling an image outside that is very different from what the reality inside. Yeah, it's very like this romantic, you know, this destination. I'm talking about Paris, of course, because France is not just Paris. France is
right.
wider than just Paris, but yeah, it's that. It's we also there's something that they've been selling for decades as a France as a country of human rights, right? This is something that, and we are today challenging this view and saying that that is not the case. This is not a country of human rights. It's not that, not anymore actually, because when you tell Muslims, when you target Muslims and prevent them from practicing their religion and take away from them their freedom of worship and freedom of expression, that the human rights are actually in danger here, right? And where are our rights as Muslims? So France is not the country it claims to be, and although it introduces itself as a country of human rights, it clearly is not for me. For me, it's not.
What can fellow Muslims do, and what can non-Muslims do to help this situation that we're in? And I don't want to say fight. I try to choose my words carefully because they can always come back. But I guess combat this bill or this ban and everything that France is trying to do. What can Muslims and non-Muslims do?
So first of all, there are different things we can do, and starting with what we're doing here is raising awareness, give a platform to Muslims in France or French Muslims to speak about their struggles and raise awareness. This is extremely important. Like I said, this is a platform that's denied to us in our own country, so it's important for us to have this outside and to find allies outside, whether they're Muslims or not. It doesn't matter if you're Muslims or not. It's enough for you to believe in human rights and freedom. Like I said before, like it starts with Muslims, but it can also backfire and become something different. So yeah, it starts with that, is creating conversations, debates about it. I'm not against debating and hearing different views, and people might think that this is fair enough, and France has every right to decide what to do or not. But I'm open to that as well, to conversations, debate. That's one thing we can do. Second thing is maybe using social media as a way to to help organizations in France and raise more awareness. Use a hashtag. We've been using the hashtag Hands Off My Hijab. There's one in French as well, Touche pas mon voile, which is the same thing in French. So we can use that on social media. Help activists there and organizations by donating money. That could also be a way to help French Muslims. And I think I did some conversations on Clubhouse, and I was asked even by lawmakers in the UK and the US if there's anything they could do to help us. We were even thinking about doing something with the United Nations. Taking this movement on a global scale would be really helpful, because if it stays just like a national thing or European thing, I don't think this is going to be very helpful. But the situation now in France is quite serious, and I want to emphasize this because it's important. So helping us is not just by displaying hashtags. Is everywhere you think you can be helpful. It's just by raising awareness, speaking around, offering us platforms, raising money, and supporting the organizations in France who are doing an amazing job to tackle racism and Islamophobia.
Thank you. Very well said. Thank you so much for joining me, Shaima. It was a
Thank you, Ashley.
That was an excellent talk. I hope that everybody is kind of, I guess, fired up and feeling as empowered as I am.
I hope so. I really hope so. Reach out to me. I mean, I don't know if my handle is going to be displayed anywhere, but you can reach out to me. I'm more than happy to educate people and let them know about what's happening. And I'm always hoping to answer questions about it. Thank you so much, Ashley. Jazakallah alf khair.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who joined us. Thank you for joining our live. Of course, we will have this up on our YouTube and Facebook. You can also find us on Instagram at World Hijab Day. Visit our website, worldhijabday.com, for more information about other projects that we're doing, and stay tuned for more lives. We will be on YouTube and Facebook Live, and occasionally Instagram as well. So make sure you follow and subscribe. Thank you so much, everyone. Salam.
Assalamu alaikum.